Joined by Steve Russolillo, Market Beat blogger.
Thanks for having me.
Because
Apple,
of course.
Do we ever talk about anything else these days?
Is there any need to talk about anything
RIM,
else?
yeah.
Sometimes RIM.
But we want to talk about the polar opposite. We talk about RIM.
You know, it's interesting today. Apple. Everyone keeps talking about how great Apple is. They can go this. The stock is going to go higher, higher, higher. Stock's above $600. Yesterday, we had one firm that came out and said they put a $1,000 price target on it. Today, another firm comes out and says Apple will be $1 trillion company within a couple of years.
A couple of years, right.
Do you buy that, Steve Russolillo?
Yeah, the firm is Piper Jaffray. It's their analyst, Gene Munster's come out and saying he actually...
Big Apple bull, right?
Big Apple bull, yeah, has been for quite some time. And so basically he came out today and said that Apple will hit 1,000 by 2014 and the market cap will get to $1 trillion. And his thought process behind this is that, you know, the earnings growth will be able to is sustainable for the next 3 years based on iPad, iPhone sales, and as long as, you know, the company can keep growing at a 20% rate, or its profits can keep growing at a 20% rate over the next 3 years, there's no reason why the stock can't keep going higher.
Oh, you get 20% growth every year. What's
20% growth every year, as if, you know, for a company the size of Apple, that's just nothing.
But that's the amazing Apple story. They've actually have been doing it. And what's interesting about his prognostication is he believes firmly there's going to be an Apple TV, and I think we'll talk about that a little later on. But he's not factoring that into that price target and that growth.
Yeah,
so that's if no Apple TV shows up for years, he still thinks it's $1 trillion company.
Exactly.
And he thinks that the existing franchises they have, the iPad, the iPhone, the growth there, he thinks that's already baked in, just given refresh cycles and that kind of thing, right?
Right. He says that about, you know, I think his figure is 45% of iPhones sold through 2015 are in the bag, basically, based on usage rates and whatnot. So, you know, that's a pretty hefty number right there. Again, you know, all this just brings up the question, though, is that, you know, can this stock actually go to 1,000? Sure. I mean, people are talking about valuation. They're talking about PE ratios and that this stock still looks cheap compared to the broad market. So if you have that mindset, then you think that the stock could go higher, right?
Let's call up a few of these stock charts that I know we have up here. I mean, Pierre Coffey, do you really think that Apple can go to 1,000? I mean, so you can see it right now, 627. That's today's chart, up 1.5%. I mean, $1,000 for a stock.
Yeah.
Do you think that can happen for Apple?
Why not? Now, just let's be clear, I don't invest in individual stocks. I don't think people should. I don't put my money in index funds, blah, blah, blah. But why not? I mean, you wouldn't have said Apple was going to be 600 2 years ago, right? If we're just making bets, right? They have yet to prove that they are going to do something wrong. Now, as soon as we say that, we know they will inevitably falter. We were saying this about Netflix last summer, right? And they nosedive. They took a nosedive. Could conceivably happen here, but they're selling real products to real people who like this stuff, who go back to buy these things more than once. They're re-upping, and no one has really been touching them yet in the spaces they've sort of pioneered.
Yeah, see, my thing is just, it's really just a psychological thing. I think once a stock starts hitting 750, 8, just once it starts getting up in those numbers, I think psychologically people are going to buy less of it. It just becomes too expensive. I know the valuation. They'll tell you it's not you know, excessively valued.
I get
that.
Stock. It's also a story stock too. So you do have individual investors who are Apple bulls no matter what, who will take runs at this stuff too.
You do.
I think to your point. I mean, you look at a stock like Google when it got into the $700 range, but it still wasn't able to pierce that level. And so I think the difference though is that, you know, now Apple is paying a dividend. They announced the share buyback.
Not a huge dividend,
not a huge dividend, but they're paying a dividend, and so you now have a different breed of investors, so to speak, that is going to be coming in. You have a lot of these mutual funds who only invest in dividend-paying stocks are now going to come into the game. You know, not going to say that that is worth X amount percent. I mean, who knows? But it's just, I think that's something to consider, and another reason why the stock could go higher from these levels.
I say it's not going to happen. I think people are getting a little ahead of themselves. I know Apple, it's a great growth story. I understand that. I just think when you start talking about $1,000 a stock, I don't think that's going to happen. I just don't think it's going to happen.
It seems what we have, especially this week with the firm Topeka Securities coming out yesterday and saying 1,000.
Yeah, they're not trying to get their name in the papers.
And then
you
know, you have the same.
Who are they? Sorry, Topeka. No insult, but 1,000.
Welcome, Topeka.
Welcome to
You know, the blogger Josh Brown said, you know, this brings you back to the tech bubble days when strategists were elbowing their way through to see who's going to have the higher price target. And so you seem like you have a similar thing bubbling up here. I don't know if we can use that word or not, but
go ahead, use it.
So
by the way, I worked for one of those guys, worked for Henry Blodgett post his stockbroking days, his investment days. He made his name predicting that Amazon would hit 400. It did. Right. And if now you look at stock splits, et cetera, that 400 price tag no longer seems ridiculous after you've taken the splits out. So some of this is a little bit of theater, right? If Apple split the stock, the $1,000 thing wouldn't be a freak out. The company would be as valuable. Maybe they'll do that one day as well.
Yeah, split could happen. All right, let's leave it there. Steve Russolillo.
Thanks so much.
Thank you very much.